'Cause I'm happy. Clap along if you feel.
Good afternoon. It's Thursday. It's 3:08 and it's time for you to be adrenalized. That's right, folks. It's time to get that blood flowing and get re-energized. Why? Because you're here. You're alive and it's time to be motivated to live your best life. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Tom Marino Show. I'm your host, Mindset and Success Strategy Coach Tom Marino. Thank you so much for tuning in on this beautiful Thursday afternoon. Listen, I want to hear from you. I want to know what's going on in your life. I want you to reach out and ask a question that you want to ask of a coach. You're struggling with a problem. You're overwhelmed. You're stressed out. You feel like you're on that brink of burnout and you're just not sure what to do next. Reach out to me. Go to tommarino.com and fill out the contact form. And hey, listen, if it's easy for you to just text me, that's what I want you to do. Text me at 516-588-0750. That's 516-588-0750. And I'm here for you. I want you to know that I am here to help navigate you to the next stop on your destination. All right. So before we get into today's show, and today's show is going to be great, we're going to be talking with a psychologist. It's a coach and a psychologist today. I'll introduce her very soon. But before we get into the show, I want to thank Newhouse Restoration for being our sponsor, where they turn your damaged old house into a new house. Visit them at newhouserestoration.com. That's newhouserestoration.com. And if you've had a flood, fire, sewer backup, or asbestos, contact Newhouse Restoration. Give them a call at 631-604-8590. That's 631-604-8590. And listen, tell them that Tom Marino sent you. Alrighty. So today is Thursday. Another week has gone by. And I am telling you, there's so much stress in this world right now. There's so much fear going on right now. I just feel like everywhere I turn, somebody is stressed out or feeling overwhelmed or even a little panicky. And that's why today's conversation, I think, is so appropriate for the time we're living in. I am going to introduce to you Dr. Kayla Nelson, who is a clinical psychologist who got her doctorate at California Lutheran University, and she has had comprehensive experience as a behavior interventionist, working with children, adolescents, and adults facing various mental health concerns. She enjoys helping her clients discover their strengths, interests, and unique qualities to create a more fulfilled life. Is there any more aligned with Tom Marino when I hear the words fulfilled life? And I'm so excited to have you in the studio today, Kayla. So welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. I'm excited to be here.
And you know, we've met through Long Island Networkers several months ago. We did the paint night, which was awesome. We sat right next to each other, and we painted our lions, and we just hit it off, and we just had such great conversation. And I'm so excited for everybody to hear what you have to say and your fresh perspective that you bring to being a psychologist. So tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah, so I am, like you said, a clinical psychologist. I work with primarily children, adolescents, and young adults. Mostly seeing clients experiencing anxiety, depression, and then trauma-related disorders. And then, of course, with working with children and adolescents, I do a lot of behavioral stuff. So ADHD, problems in school, etc., working with the parents, that sort of thing. So
what would you say the majority of your time is spent as a clinical psychologist right now? Where are you fully concentrated right now?
I play lots of games, Candyland and art therapy. No, I really have a nice mix of children, adolescents, and young adults, which is great. And I spend most of my time in the therapy room talking to clients.
That's fantastic. And congratulations, you just opened a new office. So tell everybody about that. Tell us also, what's the name of your business?
Yeah, so Glacier Psychology Services. It's for the last year, it's just been myself, and I just brought on 2 new amazing clinicians also who specialize in the same area that I do, working with children and adolescents and young adults. And we moved into a bigger office space, so we have more ability to see more clients, and we have a playroom, which is my favorite. So
that's awesome. You get to go to work and you get to play.
It's great.
I mean, how much better can life be when you get to play? And I say that in jest, because when you're doing what you love to do, It is like playing. You don't,
Absolutely.
it's not the same kind of stress. There's always the stress to business, but wow, you added 2 clinicians.
Mm-hmm.
What was the reason that happened?
I'm too busy. My waiting list is too long, and I kept having to tell clients I can't see you. And so I've had clients sitting on a waiting list for several months.
Wow.
And so I just knew I needed to bring more people in, because there's particularly a lot of children and adolescents sitting on a waiting list.
Yeah,
and that bothers me.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, that is like the trend all across mental health facilities, organizations. I work 3 days a week for a federally qualified health center. Even keeping clinicians creates having that wait list, and that wait list keeps going and going and going. And we are in such need of mental health and wellness right now with everything going on. So I love the name of your business, Glacier Psychology. Glacier Psychology Services. Where did you come up with Glacier Psychology? Because I mean, I know it's just the tip of the iceberg, but tell me more about that.
Yeah, I get that question a lot. And really, the true story was I was trying to figure out something associated with Long Island, because I knew that's where I was going to open my practice. And Long Island kind of broke off because of glaciers.
Okay.
Right? So I was like, okay, I could maybe go with that. And then I really was able to turn it into, this is something that actually does speak to mental health. And that what I see all the time with clients is they only show one side of themselves, or certain sides of themselves. We see a version of the people we know in our lives, and there's just so much more there. And that's what the therapy space is about, is allowing people to be their full selves,
right,
and be seen and accepted and supported in those darkest areas where usually they hide those parts away.
Right. And it's so true. So many people are so afraid to ask for the help, right?
Yeah.
And I think one of the major barriers that we're facing as a country is because of the shortage of licensed professionals who can do mental health. We have people who, once they're ready, then they have these waitlist barriers, and they have these other barriers, insurance barriers, and all of these other obstacles that are in the way. How are people supposed to navigate in the meantime? Is there a way? It's just to keep going? Is it to keep asking for the help? What is it?
Oh, that's a tough one. Keep asking for the help. Lean in. I always encourage my clients to lean into the support that they do have. So that would go to anybody. Everybody has some level of support. Usually, you just have to look for it. You have to reach out to those friends, those family members. Go talk to your teacher if you're a student and you're struggling. And when you start talking about what you're experiencing, you're much more likely to then be connected to who you need to be connected to.
Correct. Psychologists are not the only people who listen to problems.
No.
There are so many, and I love what you just said about that. If you're a kid in a school and you're struggling with something, that's why there's guidance counselors. There's social workers in the schools for these reasons. There's school psychologists in the schools for these reasons. My wife is a school psychologist. She doesn't do the counseling piece anymore because she has more administrative function. But there's a lot of people and resources right there in your community.
Yeah, and if they can't do the counseling, like you said, a lot of school psychologists can't do the counseling because they're doing other things.
Right.
But they call me.
Right.
They help find who you need to be connected to.
Absolutely. So we are speaking to Dr. Kayla Nelson from Glacier Psychology. Her office is located in Huntington. Her brand new office is located in Huntington. She has a great playroom for all those kids that are struggling and need her support. So we're going to keep going with a conversation with her. If you haven't already, go to my Instagram at Tom Marino Coaching and DM me a question that you want to ask me. And if you want to ask Kayla a question while she's here in the studio, give us a call at 631-451-1039. That's 631-451-1039. We'll be back right after this break.
Well, I should probably warn you, I'll be just...
Hey, this is Tom Marino of The Tom Marino Show here. Imagine you wake up and you've had a major sewer backup in your home. Well, let me tell you about a company that I've worked with personally, New House Restoration, where they take your damaged old house and make it a new house. For any water, fire, mold, or asbestos damage, please call them at 631-604-8590. That's 631-604-8590. New House Restoration.
Because I'm happy. Clap along.
And welcome back to the Tom Marino Show. I'm your host, mindset and success strategy coach Tom Marino. Thank you for coming back. If you're just tuning in and this first time you listen to the show today, I want to let you know that we are speaking with Dr. Kayla Nelson from Glacier Psychology Services, located in Huntington. And Kayla is a clinical psychologist who specializes in children, adolescents, and adults. And before the break, we were talking about how there is such a shortage of mental health professionals that everywhere we seem to turn where people need help for mental health and wellness, there are waiting lists, there are major obstacles to getting the care that they need. And that's simply just because there's just not enough people who are licensed to do mental health services in this country. I've said this several weeks ago, not tying this just to gun violence, but one of the reasons that we need to change things up is we need to invest more in mental health. Our minds and our bodies are all the same. They need the same amount of care. High blood pressure needs the same care as depression. It needs the same care as anxiety. It needs the same care as a toe fungus. You need to take care of your bodies, and your mind is part of your body. Kayla, I emailed you an article yesterday that came out so timely for our conversation that was published on Psychology Today. It was talking about that new research is finding coaching to be on par with therapy. But what I want to focus on in this part of the show is the data that is just coming about the impact that COVID is having on the rise in anxiety and depression. Almost 38% increase in anxiety within 1 year of having COVID, 39% in depression within that 1 year. Are you seeing that in your everyday?
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah, I have been seeing so many clients coming in with anxiety and depression. Rates particularly increased with adolescents.
Okay.
Is where I work the most. So, and there's just so many factors in terms of what is really leading to these increases in anxiety, depression. I mean, I think it's just hitting some specific concerns that people already had, right? Illness, anxiety, and that sort of thing. But then just this unknown, and then this fear of, after getting COVID, after being so careful and you still get COVID,
right?
That really kind of leaves you feeling very vulnerable.
Yeah. I mean, it's the fear. First of all, it's the fear of getting it, right? When the pandemic first started, everybody was so afraid to get it because it was so deadly.
Yep.
In early 2020. I mean, that was the key. And, your mortality is being tested, right? And that is a true rational fear to have.
One of the biggest fears.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, oh my God. Like, what was that movie years ago? Not Outbreak, the other one that was like pre-COVID. I can't think of the name of it, but there was a movie that with Kate Winslet that was some virus that spread so quickly and killed so many people. But the point is that we did live that. We did live that, and we are traumatized by that, and many are traumatized, and that's what the anxiety is around. But I have heard of, and I know of some cases where post-COVID in children, especially that I've seen, there was an increase in their child's anxiety.
Yeah.
And they just were not the same kid anymore. Now, it's not as bad as it was initially right after, but you just see that the hypervigilance around it, right? That waiting for that shoe to drop. What is the fear that is manifesting the anxiety now, right? It was death in the very beginning, but what is it now? What are you seeing that people are most afraid of with COVID in this current state?
I see a lot of, we're never going to go back to normal life. We lost, again, with adolescents, I'm seeing they lost a huge chunk of a very important part of their lives, right? They lost their prom, they lost their football games, they lost hanging out with friends. And now that they're back in person, it's just not the same.
Right. And that's a great point. I mean, from a social development standpoint, kids that were in middle and high school for the first 2 years of this pandemic really lost key developmental periods in their life.
Yes.
The impact is going to be significant as adults. It's
significant. And I don't think adults now recognize how significantly this has impacted our youth.
Yeah. I could see, listen, I see it every day. I see it in people's performance. You know, everybody's going through this weird lack of motivation right now, right? Mm-hmm. And I was reading an article that was talking about how lack of motivation is one of the early signs of depression, right? There's hallmarks for depression, but the key here is that we're seeing it manifest in different ways, right? Motivation is one. Mm-hmm. People are just tired. They just don't want to do anything anymore. Yep. People have lost their mojo. I mean, that's what most of my clients are saying to me as a coach is, I'm just having a hard time staying and getting motivated again.
Yep. Yeah. And I'm seeing this a lot with my adult clients as well, this struggle with work. And there's just been so many shifts in the last 2 years of what does work look like? What does work feel like? And the thing is so now we have adults losing their motivation, their mojo for work, and this rubs off on our children.
Correct.
And so now we have teachers and parents losing motivation. Mm-hmm. How are the kids supposed to stay motivated?
Exactly. And so many, scrolling through TikTok, so many teachers left their teaching profession this past year.
Yes.
And I don't know what the data is. I would love to get some data on that, but that I've never seen before. When did a teacher ever just say, nope, I'm not doing this anymore? Like, I mean, it's a great job. It's a great pension. You get motivated by those kinds of things. You put 25, 30 years in and things go really well, but people are leaving that now.
Yeah.
So we're in this huge shift, right? The Great Resignation has triggered teachers even to leave their jobs. Mm-hmm. Do you get a chance to work closely with a lot of schools in your work? Do you have good relationship? How do you connect with the schools in this situation?
Yes and no. I talk to teachers all the time. If I'm working with a kid, I'm in connection with the school and the teachers, the social workers. I really would like to start building stronger connections, and I've been held back because of COVID.
Okay.
So I've tried to go in and provide free seminars to teachers, students, parents, and it's been restricted because of COVID. Right. I'm really hoping come the fall and in this next year, I'll be able to do more of that.
Yeah, I think it's great. I mean, because I know it's not an easy, we first of all, we have a shortage of licensed professionals like you and clinical psychologists that know what they need to do for all these people. Yet not everybody knows about everybody who is out there, because as a psychologist, it's hard to put yourself out there because you're just so overwhelmed with the number of people that you have.
Yeah, absolutely. And the students don't know how to ask for help. The parents don't know what questions to ask or when their kid is struggling. Mm-hmm. Neither do the teachers really. So it's a challenge when we're not making those connections. Because It would be so helpful for me and other professionals to go into the schools to provide some of this information and to say, hey, if you need to talk, this is where you can find me. Right.
That's such a key point. So again, tell everyone how they can reach you, Kayla.
Yeah, the best way to reach me is my website, glacierpsychology.com, or emailing me directly, Kayla at Glacier Psychology, or my admin services at Glacier Psychology.
Fantastic. And your office is located where?
In Huntington, New York.
Fantastic. And are you doing any telemedicine visits?
I am, yeah. So about half my caseload is telemedicine. So I see people across the state. I see a lot of people in the city.
Okay, fantastic. And you can see anyone in the state of New York through telemedicine. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. There's some weird rules. I mean,
there is. You got to be in the state of New York. If you're in Connecticut, I'm sorry, you got to find somebody in Connecticut.
That's the crazy thing. With such a shortage of professionals, to have to worry about that restriction,
I know,
just makes things so crazy. All right, we're going to get into so much more after our next break. But we were speaking to Dr. Kayla Nelson from Glacier Psychology. You can find her at glacierpsychology.com. And listen, go visit tommarino.com. That's tommarino.com. And leave me a question on the radio page. Go ask any question that you want to ask, and we are here to help you. All right, we will be back after this commercial break.
Here come bad news, talking this and that. Well, give me all you got and don't hold it back. Well, I should probably warn you, I'll be just fine. No offense to you, don't waste your time. Because I'm happy. Clap along.
And welcome back to the Tom Marino Show. I'm your host, Mindset and Success Strategy Coach Tom Marino. Thank you so much for tuning back in on this beautiful yet humid Thursday afternoon, July 14th. It is July 14th. We are in the middle of July. I can't believe how fast the summer is going by, but it's July 14th already. So we've been talking with Dr. Kayla Nelson, who's a clinical psychologist. She owns Glacier Psychology in Huntington, and she works with children, adolescents, and adults. And we've been talking about so many different things. We started in the last segment talking about the rise in anxiety and depression due to COVID, whatever those variables may be, whether it is something from the virus or it's something that we saw because of quarantine and the change and the fears of our mortality and all of that. There are just so many factors that I can't wait to see what the studies show in the future with that. But one of the things we were talking about during the break, Kayla, is you really work with a lot of parents, and you spend a lot of your time as a psychologist working with the parents of the children that are your clients. Tell me, what are like the big issues and the big concerns or fears right now that parents are struggling with?
Well, one of the biggest issues I see parents particularly struggle with is their fear of not being good enough for their kids. And so that's, a lot of times we can get caught in the nitty gritty of behavior stuff, which that's very important. And I can talk to you about all that. But we got to start with building some confidence in parents and getting them to realize that they do know, they have this inner intuition and knowing what's best for their child.
Absolutely. That's such a great point. Like, there is a lot of parents that feel like they fail every day. I work with a lot of my clients that are business owners. Integrating your family into your business and being able to make the time for them, it leaves a spot for guilt and that judgment to come up. I just had an article published on Your Zen Mama, and I talked about 4 strategies to reduce burnout in working parents, because the statistics were crazy. 66% of working parents are reporting burnout, especially post-COVID, and because, the change for doing school at home and all that stress and having to do your job at the same time. But one of the things that I mentioned in there was identifying some of the stressors that are causing your burnout. And one of those stressors is definitely guilt and not feeling that you're doing a great job as a parent. Just because you miss a sporting event or you miss an event does not make you a bad parent.
Yes.
You've gotta give yourself, you have the toughest job. It's an on-call 24/7 job.
Yep.
So how are some ways that you help your parents to gain some more confidence in themselves?
Yeah, one of the biggest things is kind of what you were going to say is you got to give yourself some grace and give yourself some empathy because you're juggling a lot. Right. And there is no such thing as a perfect parent. And people like to judge parents a lot.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I will never forget. My son was born with the hemangioma under his eye. Okay. And I will never forget the trauma that my wife and I went through going into stores with him. One day, one woman actually walked up to her in a store and said, "Did Daddy hit him?" Yeah. Like, what judgment? Like, no, he has a birth defect on his eye. Yep. And it resolved. It's gone. It resolved by the time he was 3 years old. But what a traumatic situation. My wife felt sick to her stomach when people would do stuff like that. Yep. And there you're totally innocent. When you do screw up as a parent, when you do something that hurts the situation, you feel bad.
Yeah.
And you have to, like you said, you have to give yourself grace.
Yeah. And you have to model that for your kids. I mean, the best thing you can actually do for your children is to be able to model and show them, hey, mommy and daddy make mistakes sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I messed up when I said that to you, when I raised my voice, and I'm working on that. And can you help me?
Yeah. That's awesome. Because that makes them part of the solution.
Yeah.
And it really helps. And you know,
and it makes it okay for them to mess up.
Absolutely. Because that's the thing that we're all striving for this perfection. We're chasing this thing that does not exist. There's no such thing as perfection. And yet we hold ourselves to these standards, right? We all want to be the best parent possible when you have a kid. You want to do that. You want to give them everything. You want to be there. But you're a human being. Mm-hmm. You're going to make mistakes. What is another big factor that you see impacting their confidence? You know, what other things are coming up for them? Is it the responsibility of the work? Is it all the things changing around us, right?
Yeah, a little bit of both of that. So the work piece is huge, right? If you have working parents, you are managing a lot. Mm-hmm. If you have a job and children, you have a lot on your plate. That's just period, end of story. So, you know, one of the things I talk to my clients a lot about is stop working after work.
I love that, Kayla. Did you read the beginning of my book?
No, I haven't yet.
Well, in the beginning, it's so funny. My friend Mike wrote the foreword, and he and I used to travel into Manhattan together, and he would be on the train and he would be looking at his work emails.
Yes.
And I was like, dude, stop looking at your emails on the way into work. When you get to work, you're going to do the work.
Yes.
That's when you do the work. But that's such a great boundary. So how do you help people? You know, what are some of your suggestions to not working after work?
Well, actually, one of the best pieces of advice I ever got was from my older sister. And she told me when I went into the field of being a psychologist, it's a tough field. It's hard to turn that off when I leave, you know, to turn off my concerns about my clients. But I had to, because I have a family and I have a personal life. And so she told me, when you are on your way home from work, you need to pick a point in the road. And at that point, you need to shift your attention and start asking yourself some very important questions. How do you want to show up for the people waiting for you at home?
I love that.
Right?
Create a spot in the road. I love that.
Which makes it harder if you're working virtually.
Exactly.
But create a moment where you can ask yourself, you can set work aside and you can ask yourself, how do I want to show up for my kids, my partner, for my activities and chores after work?
You know, that is such a great, I love that. And people struggled with, you know, as much as working from home can be a blessing, it could be a curse. Because what I saw with a lot of people, especially during the early phases of the pandemic, is people overcompensated. They worked all the time. They never shut it off. And there was nowhere to go.
Yep.
You had no other space. You had to create different spaces for all of that to happen. And it's really, I love the idea of, so if you're driving home right now and you've just left your job for the day, I want you to mark this point on your journey and follow Kayla's advice. I want you to listen to what Kayla just said. If you just had a tough day and you want to show up for your family and you want to show up for your spouse and your partner and you want to show up for everything else that you have to do in your life, wherever you are on the road right now, every day when you come to this point in the road, I want you to listen to what she just said and ask yourself that question. How do I want to show up for the people in my life? That is just tremendous. That was awesome.
Yeah. And the work problems will be waiting for you in the morning.
Exactly.
You'll deal with them then when you're supposed to.
You know, and that's what people forget. The work is always going to be there. You can't finish something today that can't be left for tomorrow, especially if it's a nice to do kind of thing, right? You got to get your must do's done. That's what I always say. Get your must do's done. Because if you get your must do's done, you've done your work for the day. Tomorrow has its must-dos, and the next day and the next day. And eventually you'll get to that nice to-do. You know, so we are going to continue our conversation after the next commercial break, but we are speaking with Dr. Kayla Nelson from Glacier Psychology. She is located in Huntington. You can reach her at glacierpsychology.com, or you can email her at Kayla, Kayla, at glacierpsychology.com. That's KAYLA at glacierpsychology.com. And listen, if you want to talk about an issue and you're not sure which direction to go, just text me. 516-588-0750. 516-588-0750. And I will be there to answer that text message. All right, we'll talk to you right after this.
Here come bad news, talking this and that.
Hey, this is Tom Marino of The Tom Marino Show here. Imagine you wake up and you've had a major sewer backup in your home. Well, let me tell you about a company that I've worked with personally, New House Restoration, where they take your damaged old house and make it a new house. For any water, fire, mold, or asbestos damage, please call them at 631-604-8590. That's 631-604-8590. New House Restoration.
Because I'm happy. Clap along.
And welcome back to the Tom Marino Show. I'm your host, success and mindset strategy coach, Tom Marino. Thank you so much for tuning back in on this beautiful Thursday afternoon, July 14th. Oh boy, it is the summer. It is hot out there. So make sure you're hydrating. Make sure if you haven't gotten up from your desk yet, if you're working from home, get up. Get out there, go for a 15-minute walk. I know it's hot, but just get out of your environment so you can clear your mind. You can do a mind, body, and soul reset. That's what it's all about. That's what the Adrenalized Life is all about, is getting that mindset of, I'm going to take charge of my life. I'm going to do what I need to do for me. I'm going to focus on self-care. I'm going to focus on how I can be the best version of me so I can show up for everybody in my life. We've been speaking with Dr. Kayla Nelson, who is a clinical psychologist from Glacier Psychology. She's the owner of Glacier Psychology in Huntington. She specializes in children, adolescents, and adults. And we've just been talking about so many different issues, how she works with parents of her clients, how she gets to play in her playroom in her new office every day with doing her therapy. Play therapy is a very important part of understanding what's going on with a kid. We didn't get into all of that today. We could probably do hours of a show together to make that all happen. But Kayla, one of the things that I wanted to talk about, being that I'm a coach and you're a psychologist, a lot of people don't understand what a coach does, right? Mm-hmm. And a lot of people don't get it. And I know you and I, there's that little tension between our two professions, but we really are collaborators, yes. Right? And one of the things that this article that came out from Psychology Today said that coaching is, showing to be on par with therapy. And they're seeing significant impact of coaching on depression and people showing symptoms of depression. There was actually a significant improvement in just talking with the coach and talking it out. And I just think the whole theory is talk about your problems and you're going to start to feel better, right? Yes. When we hold them in, that's the issue. But I want to make sure our listeners understand the differentiation between a coach and a psychologist, right? So you tell everybody what you do as a psychologist that's different from what a coach does.
Yeah, so there's huge overlap, really. But when we're talking about a psychologist or another mental health professional, social worker, mental health counseling, we have gone through years of training, mm-hmm. specifically for the assessment, diagnosis, and treatment of mental illness.
Correct.
Right. So that's really the biggest difference.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and that is such a key thing. And coaching is none of that. It is not about making an assessment. It's not about making a diagnosis. And it's not coming up with the proper treatment plan to help that person. Coaching is following the lead of the client on where they want to make the desired changes in their life. They're telling us as coaches what they want to see change. Mm-hmm. Now, sometimes people will leave a session with me and go, I feel like I just had a therapy session. And they'll go, yeah, because I'm asking you questions mm-hmm. that are very powerful and mind and thought provoking. And that's where we are similar, is in the questions that we ask people. You have a plan that you're getting them to, right, to help them achieve that goal of that plan. Whereas I'm also helping them to achieve the goal of their plan by asking them the questions for them to think about, not because I'm diagnosing them or I have a prescribed treatment plan.
Right.
And it's really what the article talked about is how subclinical professionals, that's how they referred to coaching, is such an important part because of the lack of providers that we have in the mental health space.
Yes.
Right. Coaching is a mental health activity. It's a wellness activity, and it's a necessary activity. And it's also less stigmatizing, right?
Yes.
That's the other big significant
Which is
difference.
a wonderful piece.
Right. Right. Because coaching is an alternative to therapy.
Right.
When you don't have the access to therapy, but you want something to change and be different, seek out a coach.
And the most important thing is that you are feeling better.
Exactly.
That's what matters.
You're talking it through and you're feeling better with it. And that's one of the things too, as a coach, like, and you mentioned something very important. Kayla went through 9 years?
9 years all said and done of
9
college
years.
and grad school. And everything.
Grad school to get her doctorate, get her PsyD in clinical psychology. I wanted to be a clinical psychologist when I was in school, but I went a different route. I became a physician assistant, right? Mm-hmm. But I have a training as a medical professional. I've also taught psychiatry to PA students to be able to recognize mental illness in a primary care setting. I did that for 10 years at Downstate, right? Mm-hmm. So one of the things that I always emphasize with my clients is if there comes a point in our coaching relationship where I feel, because I'm putting my clinical hat on, but unofficially putting my clinical hat on, and I'm saying, I don't think I can help you anymore, I'm going to tell you it's time to see a therapist, or I'm going to introduce the idea of you seeing a therapist and help you to get to that point so that you get the best care that you need at that time. And
yes.
So many of my clients do therapy and coaching at the same time. Have you had that in your experience? Do you have some of your clients that do coaching too?
I do, yes. And it's really helpful. It helps supplement the work that we're doing together and offers just more access to care.
Right. Yeah. And that's why I love what you just said. It's a supplement, right? Mm-hmm. What you're doing in therapy, a coach can supplement.
Yes.
A therapist can't necessarily supplement what the coach is doing because there's more underlying issues that's beyond the coach. But I really, and here's the other thing. In the article, it mentioned people trained like in a mental health, evidence-based mental health way. And the training that I went through as a coach was written and designed by therapists.
Right.
It was written and they created, and they were very specific on how to not let it be an overlap between, not to have it contradict with what therapy and what coaching is, and make sure your clients always understand that. Mm-hmm. But having a clinical background, it's much easier for me to see this, especially my affinity to understanding mental health and mental wellness, that it's important that people understand that at some point, I'm going to say, it's time for you to see somebody to get the help that you need that I can't help you with.
Right.
And knowing my boundary, and this is my advice to all coaches out there, know your boundaries.
Yes.
Right? Collaborate with someone like you. Like you and I need to think about, how do we collaborate better? How do I help you? How can you help me? And figure out how we best as a team can really help people.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think the boundaries piece is huge, that coaches need to know their boundaries, and clients working with coaches pay attention to, do you feel safe and do you feel like your coach knows the boundaries? Does your coach step in and say, hey, I really think this is a trauma piece where it would be helpful for you to at least consult with a mental health professional?
Absolutely. And I do that all the time because trauma is one of the biggest underlying issues that we all have that needs to be addressed in a professional way. Now, it depends on the severity of the trauma, obviously. And I think that from a coaching standpoint, being trauma informed, right? Like I've been through trainings for trauma informed care. I understand, that we just are approaching everyone as if they've been traumatized in some way, right? But when that trauma gets too deep and people start to lose their stuff and they can't get past it and they're so stuck, as a coach, you're not going to be able to do your job. Right. That's when I say, let's take a break and let's get you to a therapist who can really help you. So Kayla, tell everybody how they can reach you.
Yeah, the best way to reach me is definitely my website, Glacier Psychology, or my email, kayla@glacierpsychology. you can try give me a call, but I will never answer the phone because I'm always talking to people. So you're going to get in contact with my assistant, who's wonderful, and she'll help guide you. So that number is 631-335-3584.
Fantastic. Kayla, thanks so much for being here today.
Thank you.
All right, everyone. You have been listening to the Tom Marino Show with Mindset and Success Strategy Coach Tom Marino. And our guest today was Dr. Kayla Nelson from Glacier Psychology, glacierpsychology.com. Listen, if you're a solopreneur, a business owner, you're stressed out, you're overwhelmed, text me 516-588-0750, 516-588-0750. And until next time, this is Tom Marino saying, choose your adrenalized life.
Well, give me all you got and don't hold it back.